You know that feeling. You're exhausted after a long day. You grab the remote, and somehow you end up watching your fourth consecutive episode of Law & Order SVU, even though you've seen every single one of them at least twice. Yeah, there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why USA Network has essentially transformed into a 24/7 procedural rerun machine. This is the same USA Network that used to give us Monk and Psych and Burn Notice. The same network that was #1 in cable for 14 straight years. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating stories in television history. How USA Network went from being the top cable entertainment network to becoming what the New York Times literally called zombie TV. But here's the twist. That transformation wasn't a failure. It was actually a calculated pivot that tapped into something deep in our psychology. Something that keeps millions of us coming back to watch the same episodes over and over again. This is the story of how USA Network accidentally became America's default comfort channel. If you're into TV history and media nostalgia, hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. Section 1. The unlikely origins of a cable pioneer. To understand how USA Network became the comfort TV king, we need to go back to the very beginning. And the beginning is way more interesting than you might expect. USA Network launched on September 22, 1977, but it wasn't called USA Network back then. It started as the Madison Square Garden Sports Network. And here's a fun piece of trivia. The person who ran it was Kay Koplovitz, who became the first woman to ever head a cable television network in American history. The channel was actually a technical pioneer, one of the first national cable networks delivered via satellite, rather than the old microwave relay systems. And it was the first basic cable channel to rely primarily on advertising revenue, rather than just subscriber fees. Pretty forward thinking for 1977. The network rebranded as USA Network on April 9, 1980, and for the next 2 decades, it was kind of a mess. Industry observers described it as the television equivalent of a potluck supper, a hodgepodge of reruns and cast-offs. It was sports, game shows, low-budget originals, and whatever syndicated content they could get their hands on. But there was one thing that worked: wrestling. WWF Wrestling debuted on the channel in the early 1980s and became its most reliable draw. WWE Monday Night Raw premiered on USA on January 11, 1993. It would anchor the network's schedule across 2 separate runs spanning decades. Wrestling wasn't prestigious, but it was consistent, and it brought eyeballs. Now the ownership history of USA Network reads like a corporate game of hot potato. Time Incorporated, Paramount, and MCA each held 1/3 stakes in the 1980s. Viacom sold its 50% share to Seagram for $1.7 billion in the mid-1990s after losing a non-compete lawsuit. Barry Diller acquired controlling interest in 1998. Vivendi Universal bought the entertainment assets in 2001 for $10.3 billion. Then GE's NBC merged with Vivendi's entertainment division in 2003 and 2004 to create NBC Universal. And finally, Comcast acquired controlling ownership in January 2011. Here's a wild stat. One analyst estimated that USA Network alone contributed $9.5 billion to NBC Universal's total $44.8 billion valuation at the time of the Comcast deal. That's more than 20 times what NBC's actual broadcast network was worth. Let that sink in. The cable channel was worth more than the broadcast network. But that valuation wasn't built on wrestling and reruns. It was built on something that happened in 2002, something that would change everything. Same year, they launched The Dead Zone. And with those 2 shows, USA accidentally stumbled onto a formula that would make them the most watched cable network in America for over a decade. The industry called it the Blue Sky Era. Lighthearted, character-driven procedurals set against sunny backdrops with optimistic tones. These weren't gritty prestige dramas. They weren't trying to be The Sopranos or The Wire. They were fun, they were escapist, and they were absolutely addictive. The architect of this era was Bonnie Hammer. She took oversight of USA Network in May 2004 after the NBC-Universal merger. Her team did something smart. They asked focus groups what appealed to them about America. And the respondents said something interesting. The country's appeal was more about its people than the place. That insight became everything. In 2005, USA launched its new tagline, "Characters Welcome."
USA, characters welcome.
And that wasn't just marketing. It was a programming philosophy. The network stopped being what Hammer called a last resort network and became a destination. The lineup that followed was remarkable in its consistency. Psych premiered in 2006, Burn Notice in 2007, Royal Pains in 2009, White Collar in 2009, Covert Affairs in 2010, Suits in 2011. Every single one of these shows shared the same DNA: episodic, witty, escapist, with protagonists you actually wanted to spend time with every week. And the ratings were absolutely massive. Burn Notice drew 9 million viewers for one delayed viewing episode. Royal Pains debuted to 8.2 million. Monk's series finale pulled 9.4 million viewers. That was a USA Network record. In Plain Sight's 2008 premiere hit 5.3 million, which was then a network high for a series debut. Chris McCumber, who joined USA in 2001 and became co-president in 2011, oversaw this golden age. He had created the Characters Welcome brand campaign and later led the Characters Unite social initiative. Under his leadership, USA held #1 cable entertainment network position for 14 consecutive years. That's the longest winning streak in television history. By 2012, USA reached over 102 million U.S. households. They weren't just winning, they were dominating. So what happened? How did the most successful cable network in history become a channel that runs SVU reruns for 46 hours straight? Section 3. The Pivot.
Oh, I don't know. Is it that we collectively thought?
The cracks started showing around 2014. USA dropped 18% in viewership and lost its first place crown for the first time in over a decade. The network tried to adapt. They attempted a tonal pivot with darker shows. Mr. Robot in 2015, The Sinner in 2017, Queen of the South in 2016. They rebranded with the tagline, "We the Bold" in 2016, officially retiring Characters Welcome. Now, Mr. Robot was actually really good. It won Golden Globes, Emmys, and a Peabody Award. But here's the thing. Its debut attracted only 1.75 million live viewers. Compare that to the 8 or 9 million that the Blue Sky shows used to pull. Critical acclaim wasn't translating into ratings. The decisive break came in May 2020. USA canceled The Purge, Treadstone, and Dare Me as part of what Deadline described as an overall programming shift away from ongoing scripted series toward more live and unscripted programming. The trade publication noted that this was a strategy being followed by multiple basic cable networks because it was becoming increasingly challenging for premium scripted series to be sustained by the linear ad-supported cable business model. By late 2023, USA's only remaining original scripted series was Chucky, which they shared with Sci-Fi. So why reruns? Why fill your entire schedule with shows that have already aired somewhere else? The answer is simple. Money. Reruns cost approximately 75% less than producing original scripted episodes. A typical cable original drama costs somewhere between $3 and $7 million per episode to produce. Meanwhile, syndication license fees for proven hits range from $500,000 to $2.5 million per episode. And the content comes pre-tested with built-in audiences. You're not gambling on whether viewers will show up. You already know they will. Look at USA's specific syndication deals. They acquired NCIS in 2006 from Paramount for roughly $750,000 per episode. An industry insider later called it probably the best buy in the history of syndication. They purchased NCIS Los Angeles after just 7 weeks on air for approximately $2.2 to $2.5 million per episode on a record 12-year deal. Chicago PD was acquired in September 2017 for roughly $500,000 per episode. And because USA was an NBC Universal property, they could air sister company shows like SVU and the Chicago franchise at favorable intra-corporate rates, while also purchasing external content like NCIS from CBS and Paramount. The math just made sense. Original programming was expensive and risky. Reruns were cheap and reliable. But here's what nobody expected. The reruns weren't just a survival strategy. They were tapping into something much deeper. Section 4. The Psychology of Comfort TV.
The cat is not my new partner, Gus. Don't be ridiculous.
Then tell me again why the cat gets to ride shotgun?
He gets car sick, and you know this, dude.
The term comfort TV has no single originator, but it gained significant cultural momentum after the 2016 election and absolutely exploded during the COVID-19 pandemic. Netflix reported that older network programs like The Office and Friends were among its most watched shows in 2018. Article after article throughout the late 2010s framed low-stakes shows as the ultimate in comfort TV. But why? Why do we want to watch things human history? The psychological research here is actually fascinating. Dr. J. Derrick of the University of Houston published foundational work on what she called the social surrogacy hypothesis. Her research demonstrated that people turn to favored TV programs when they're lonely, and they genuinely feel less lonely afterward. Her 2012 follow-up study found that rewatching familiar shows actually restores self-control after mental depletion. She explained it this way. There's something special and comfortable about a relationship in which you already know what the other person is going to say and do, and all you have to do is sit there and enjoy it. Think about that for a second. When you rewatch Monk or Psych or SVU, you're not just killing time. You're engaging in a form of social connection with characters you know and trust. Your brain processes them almost like old friends. Additional research supports this from multiple angles. There's something called the mere exposure effect. Repeated viewing increases liking because the content becomes easier for your brain to process. Other researchers found that familiar media consumption actually reduces cortisol levels. That means a direct physiological stress reduction. Psychologist Christine Bacho explained it this way. When people are stressed, anxious, or feeling out of control, nostalgia helps calm them down. It's comforting. It's analogous to a hug from your mom or dad. And procedural dramas are uniquely suited to this role. Each episode is self-contained. You can miss 3 weeks of SVU and come. This is reliably served by the credits. The sheer volume of episodes makes marathon programming viable in ways that serialized prestige dramas never could. SVU has over 550 episodes. NCIS has over 460. Dick Wolf, the creator of the Law and Order franchise, put it bluntly in a 2024 interview. He said procedurals are successful because viewers see them as comfort television. They don't disappoint you, and you want to keep them coming back. His COO added that procedurals are somewhat reassuring, that there is some order to the universe. Even Mariska Hargitay, the star of SVU, acknowledged the paradox. She said it's ironic that a crime show would actually be calming to our nervous system, but there's something about knowing that somebody is out there taking care of it. So when you turn on USA Network at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday and see Olivia Benson questioning a suspect for the 800th time, you're not being lazy. You're self-medicating. Your brain is seeking out predictable, familiar content as a form of emotional regulation. USA Network didn't plan to become a comfort TV destination, but by filling their schedule with procedural reruns, they accidentally became exactly what millions of stressed-out viewers needed. Section 5. The NCIS Symbiosis.
Look, all I'm saying is that I was bored.
It's a compliance seminar, Nick. It's not Coachella. You're supposed to be bored.
Right.
Here's a story that might blow your mind. USA Network's reruns didn't just sustain the network, they actually created the biggest show on broadcast television. NCIS was not an instant hit on CBS. The former CBS Entertainment president admitted that he didn't think it was really NCIS in its first season. It took a couple of seasons to really become something. But then, USA acquired cable rerun rights in 2006 and started running episodes in heavy rotation. And something unexpected happened. The NCIS executive producer explained it directly. At the end of their third season, NCIS was sold to USA Network, where they started running it constantly. That's when the network ratings went up and they moved to the #1 position. The CBS distribution president confirmed it. There's no doubt that the airings on USA Network brought a whole new audience to the show. Think about that. USA was airing reruns of NCIS. Those reruns exposed the show to millions of viewers who had never watched it before. Those viewers then started watching the new episodes on CBS. NCIS became the #1 show on all of television for multiple seasons. And USA benefited because their reruns of the #1 show drew even bigger audiences. It was a perfect symbiotic relationship. NCIS became the #1 off-network series on cable, averaging 3.5 million viewers on USA. This success informed USA's aggressive acquisition strategy. After seeing what NCIS reruns could do, USA purchased NCIS Los Angeles cable rights after just 7 weeks on air, one of the fastest syndication sales in TV history. Today, a typical USA Network weekday devotes an estimated 83% of programming between 9 in the morning and 11 at night to just 3 franchises: Law & Order, NCIS, and legacy USA originals like Burn Notice. One media critic described this as not a television network. It's a table of frayed, used, seen better days VHS tapes at a video store going out of business sale. During one documented 46-hour stretch, USA showed SVU reruns for all but 2 hours. They filled the gap with NCIS and NCIS Los Angeles. It's not glamorous, but it works. Section 6. The current state. So where does USA Network stand now? The numbers paint a stark picture. Average primetime viewership fell from approximately 1.23 million in 2019 to 690,000 in 2023 to 673,000 in 2024 to just 472,000 in 2025. That's a 62% decline over 6 years. The network dropped from number 16 to number 21 among all TV networks between 2024 and 2025. The biggest single blow was losing WWE Raw to Netflix on January 6, 2025. Raw's final USA episode drew over 1.5 million viewers, more than triple the network's non-WWE average. Household distribution fell from 102 million at peak to roughly 65 to 70 million by 2023 through 2025. But the biggest structural change came on January 2nd, 2026. That's when Comcast completed the spin-off of most NBC Universal cable properties into a new company called Versant Media Group. USA Network, along with CNBC, Sci-Fi, E!, Oxygen, and Golf Channel, now operates under Versant. The company started trading on NASDAQ under ticker VSNT. The numbers for Versant aren't great. They generated $7.1 billion in revenue in 2024, down from $7.8 billion in 2022. S&P and Fitch assigned below investment-grade credit ratings, citing ongoing headwinds tied to declining pay TV subscribers. The stock fell 13% on its first day of trading. But here's where things get interesting. Versant's entertainment president has signaled reinvestment in originals. She said the spin-off gives them the freedom to pursue content opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have been able to pursue. In December 2023, USA was reportedly plotting a return to Blue Sky-style scripted series at budgets of $2 to $3 million per episode, roughly half to one-third of typical cable drama costs. 2 series are in development: The Rainmaker, based on a John Grisham novel, and Anna Pigeon, based on Nevada Barr's novels. And what was the catalyst for this return to originals? Ironically, it was the explosive success of Suits on Netflix. In mid-2023, the show that USA created, aired, and then abandoned demonstrated that audiences still craved exactly the type of programming USA had walked away from. The very comfort TV phenomena that USA helped create came back to remind them what they used to be. Section 7. The Bigger Picture. USA Network isn't alone in the rerun pivot. Ion Television runs a near 100% rerun schedule of procedurals. TNT has shifted heavily towards sports. TBS built prime years around Big Bang Theory reruns. The CW, under Nexstar ownership since 2022, dramatically cut originals and filled its schedule with syndicated content. The competitive threat streaming services absorb the comfort TV audience on demand. Research found that 6 of 8 major streaming services generate more than half their catalog demand from shows originally released on linear TV. Second, FAST channels. That stands for Free Ad-Supported Streaming TV. These channels essentially replicate the cable rerun marathon model digitally, with entire channels dedicated to single shows. FAST channels already generate more per-month viewing in total than all but the top 2 cable networks. One media analyst described a tipping point when cable advertising decreased by double-digit percentages in 5 consecutive quarters. He said advertisers are starting to realize that there's really nothing on here and they shouldn't pay for it. S&P Global concluded bluntly in 2025 that linear TV's decline in the U.S. is irreversible, but that there's no immediate cliff. Cable's share of total TV viewing has dropped to just over 24%, down 39% since 2021. Meanwhile, streaming captured nearly 45% as of May 2025. The comfort TV audience isn't going away. But the question is whether they'll keep turning to USA Network, or whether they'll get their fix from Netflix, from Pluto TV, from Tubi, from the dozens of FAST channels dedicated to running Law & Order 24 hours a day. Conclusion. So let's come back to where we started. USA Network went from cable pioneer to the undisputed #1 entertainment network for 14 years. They built that dominance on beloved original shows. Monk, Psych, Burn Notice, Suits, shows that defined a generation of cable television. Then they abandoned all of it for procedural reruns. And here's the thing, that wasn't stupid. It was actually kind of genius. They didn't set out to become the king of comfort TV. They arrived there by default. After shedding the original programming that made them famous, they discovered that procedural reruns, while far less prestigious, are dramatically cheaper to air and surprisingly durable with audiences who want television that asks nothing of them. The NCIS story proves that reruns create real value, not just leftover attention. USA's constant airing of that show literally built the biggest program on broadcast television. That's not nothing. The psychology tells us that comfort TV isn't a guilty pleasure. It's a legitimate form of emotional regulation. When you turn on SVU for the 100th time, you're not being lazy. You're seeking out the predictable, the familiar, the reassuring. You're letting your brain rest. USA Network tapped into that need, whether they meant to or not. The question now is whether they can thread the needle, invest enough in new originals to rebuild cultural relevance, while maintaining the economic safety net of comfort reruns that still draw hundreds of thousands of nightly viewers. The Suits phenomena on Netflix proved the blue sky audience never left. They just migrated to platforms where the content was easier to find. Whether USA can recapture that audience, or whether FAST channels and streaming will ultimately absorb the comfort TV function entirely, will determine if the network survives its next chapter. or whether it becomes Comfort TV's most ironic casualty, killed by the very viewing habits it helped normalize. Either way, the next time you find yourself 3 hours deep into an SVU marathon on USA Network, you can take comfort in knowing you're part of a fascinating story. A story about television economics, human psychology, and the enduring power of familiar faces solving crimes before the credits roll. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into TV history, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments, what's your comfort show? The one you can watch over and over without ever getting tired of it? I'll see you in the next one.